Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Gestational Diabetic. I'm your host, Tracy Houston, and I am here to inform you and empower you so that you can be a confident member of your healthcare team. Quick medical disclaimer, none of the information on this podcast can be used to treat or diagnose any condition. If you feel as though you're having any medical issues, please discuss them with your healthcare provider. Today's episode is super informative and it's about an awesome topic, keto and breastfeeding. We brought on Laura Pinnick, who is keto.for.breastfeeding on Instagram. And she is a breastfeeding consultant as well as a registered dietitian. And so she is actually the first registered dietitian that I've come across who is pro keto diet for losing weight. And I mean, not to say that there aren't any other ones out there, but she was one that I saw, and especially concerning the postpartum period. So I thought that she had such a unique take on, the idea of using keto for losing weight instead of what it was initially designed for, which was for children with epilepsy. So we brought her on to talk about keto and postpartum, keto with breastfeeding and how it affects your supply and how it affects the composition of your breast milk. And there was just so many good nuggets of information that she dropped in this episode. I've seen some moms talking about, wanting to try keto as a method to lose weight after the baby, because perhaps they were overweight before getting pregnant, or they saw that, they're losing weight, or they were able to maintain their weight during pregnancy with eating lower carbs because of gestational diabetes, or maybe they just want to, lose their baby weight after pregnancy in a quick way, or, some way that's kind of planned out and organized, some kind of diet for them to follow. And so keto is something that comes up a lot in conversation amongst gestational diabetic moms. So I wanted to bring Laura on so that she could help us kind of decipher and understand how keto plays a role in our postpartum period. And since she's certified in it, also in our breast milk production and establishing that relationship with the baby. So let's get into it. Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for coming on. Can you start us off by telling us who you are, where you're from, and how you got started with all of this?
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Laura Pinnick, and I am a registered dietitian and a certified breastfeeding specialist. And I live in beautiful Bozeman, Montana, where it is winter about 9 months out of the year.
Yikes.
And yeah, it's a different place, but it's gorgeous. And I have two little girls that are 4 and 1. And they're really the reason why I do what I do. We moved here so that I could work and have my own private practice. And so that's what I do. So I get to spend a little bit more time with my girls.
How long have you been a dietitian and doing in your own practice?
I've had my own practice for maybe 3 years, I guess now. And prior to that, I worked as a pediatric dietitian for 10 years or so, and specialized in ketogenic diets at a children's hospital. And that's how I actually got into the world of keto, was working with kids with epilepsy and other neurological disabilities and using the ketogenic diet to help heal their brain and help them have better lives.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, we had a dietitian. I can't remember which episode she was from, but Madeline was her name, and she explained to us that the ketogenic diet did start for children with epilepsy, and then somewhere along the line, people discovered that it was good for weight loss, or that a lot of people lost weight, and so it kind of became, part of the health world weight loss trend thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. In the 10 years or so that I've been in the keto world, the focus has really not so much shifted, but has embraced other areas where it can be really helpful. So The Charlie Foundation is a foundation that is really responsible for bringing the ketogenic world to epilepsy, kind of reinvigorating it. And in the time that, I've followed them, they've really changed from being like epilepsy and like metabolic disorders very specifically, to now embracing as cancer therapies and traumatic brain injuries, stroke victims, and then also recognizing how it can be really helpful in metabolic health. So it's been so cool to see just how much it has expanded in less than 10 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. Now, there is a lot of misinformation on the internet about what the keto diet actually is. So, can you give us a little insight into that?
Yeah, for sure. So the ketogenic diet is a diet that is high in fat, low in carbohydrates, and then moderate in protein. So moderate in protein just means that you're eating the amount of protein that your body needs and not an excessive amount. So a lot of times people think of keto as like the original Atkins diet, where people would sit down and eat half a cow for a meal or something like that. And that's not what the goal is. It's really, generally the same amount of protein that you were eating before. And it's just a shift to eating fewer carbs and then replacing that energy with fat.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That was going to be one of my questions, was that with the lower carb amount, how are we getting what we need for our energy levels, especially as a mom in postpartum who's
For
breastfeeding?
sure. Yes. And it's really interesting. A ketogenic diet in a breastfeeding mom is very different than even in a mom who's pregnant or
Okay.
in somebody who's not breastfeeding.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because your body really uses a ton of carbs to make milk. And in order to do that, you can be eating a lot more carbs than you would otherwise. So, typically women that are doing a ketogenic diet to lose weight and keep blood sugar levels under control, they're looking at 30 grams of net carbs. And when you're breastfeeding, you're wanting to hit 50 grams of net carbs as your minimum. For some
Okay.
people that aren't breastfeeding or pregnant, that's not even going to put them into ketosis. But when you're breastfeeding and you're expending so much extra energy, you get those extra carbs too. So
Gotcha.
I always tell people it's not less isn't better. The goal isn't to get as few carbs as you can. It's really to get as many carbs as your body tolerates. And that's something that changes from person to person. We all have this carbohydrate tolerance level, and it's largely dependent on our genetics and our activity level and things like that. And so there's a lot of wiggle room for finding the tolerance level that a mom has.
So when you say tolerance level, do you mean like, are you looking at blood sugar to measure that, or?
You could be. So in a mom that has gestational diabetes or type 2 diabetes, where you are monitoring blood sugar levels, you can definitely see that the goal is to keep those blood sugar levels down, and then
Mhm.
ketones above like a zero 0.5, which I know isn't going to make much sense, but the goal of ketosis is to have your carbs low enough that your body starts to burn fat instead.
Okay.
And one of those byproducts of burning fat is ketones. And the one that we measure in blood the same way you would measure with a finger prick for your blood sugar, it's called beta hydroxybutyrate. And ketosis is 0.5 millimoles per liter beta hydroxybutyrate in your blood or higher. So it's another thing where you don't have to get this really high number to be doing well. We just want to keep your ketones at 0.5 or between 0.5 to 3 typically. So you can tell if you're staying under your carb tolerance level if you're able to maintain ketosis. And then if you're not checking those levels, if you're not checking your blood sugar, you're not checking blood ketones, then a lot of people know that they are staying under that tolerance level by an increase in energy. Brain fog goes away. They're able to think really clearly. They don't have food cravings, and their energy level just stays consistent. You don't get that super hangry, I have to eat like right now feeling. You're
Mhm.
able to, feel satisfied between meals and not feel like you have to kind of snack constantly. So usually the brain fog, the lack of energy, for some people that explain it kind of like almost like a cloud of depression. It's just kind of like your brain just isn't functioning at its full potential. And when they switch to using ketones for energy by following this low carb diet, then they're able to start to think a little bit more clearly. And that's a good sign for them that they're staying under their carb tolerance level.
Right. Now, was that a positive result also in the children with epilepsy, that they got clearer?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. And it's hard in kids because you could be using this diet as young as infants. And then
Mm.
they also have the added complication of being on anti-epileptic drugs, which can
Okay.
cause brain fog and mood changes and things like that. So it's a little bit harder to see in kids.
Gotcha.
But teenagers are able to report that, as well as, adults that have experienced it too. So just in talking with other adults that have used keto, they definitely report that improvement in brain function for them. And it's because your body uses, or your brain uses ketones for energy, and it actually preferentially uses ketones for energy. So ketones make your brain happy and can help your brain function really well. And so that's why it's used in, traumatic brain injuries and in stroke victims and things like that, because their brains can really, by switching the metabolism, can really work a little bit better.
It's so amazing how the body works, and how we can, kind of manipulate, or not manipulate, but just use different strategies
Yeah.
to better our bodies. That's so amazing to me. Okay. And then you talked about testing ketones. Is that something that a mom could do at home by herself?
Yeah. There are monitors available that are just like your blood sugar monitor. And
Okay.
what's really great is over the years, they've gotten less expensive. When I first started, they were like $5 a strip, which is ridiculous if you think about, checking it on a daily basis.
Wow.
It was completely impossible for most people. But now
Yeah.
they're like under $1 a strip, and you don't have to do it all the time. So if I
Okay.
have a mom that's wanting to check ketones when she's getting started, then you might start checking it once or twice a day. But over time, you know what that feeling of ketosis is like. And
Mm.
you may play around with it to see, like, I'm going to have this food. How does my body respond to that? Or I'm going to do this exercise. I'm kind of curious about what happens. It's really more like a science experiment at that point, just to see how your body responds to different things. Um,
Hmm.
and you can check your blood sugar too. So you get two different strips and one poke, and you can check your ketones, and then you can check your blood sugar as well with
Okay.
the same poke. Hopefully, eventually there will be essentially a continuous ketone monitor, like there's the continuous glucose monitors, because I think it would be
Oh,
super fascinating to see
yeah.
what ketones are doing in a 24-hour period, just like it's amazing to see what your blood sugar is doing in a 24-hour
Right.
period, because I think that's going to really allow people who are especially using this for therapeutic reasons. So epilepsy, cancer treatment, things like that. You can really kind of dial in what that ratio of ketones to, or glucose to ketones is, and really make some big impact in your health.
Wow. Okay. So then, real quick, because you mentioned a few benefits of the diet. So you said more energy,
Yep.
less brain fog or clearer thinking,
Yep.
better or clearer thinking, losing weight.
Yes.
And then what were some other ones?
So reduced inflammation is another big one. And the reason for that is because ketones are actually anti-inflammatory. And so if you have somebody who struggles with inflammation in their body, they have pain, they have joint stiffness, and um, just being in ketosis, even before you start to lose
Mm.
weight, that inflammation will start to go down and you will start to see improvements in your pain, which is
Okay.
really amazing, especially if somebody has arthritis or, old high school injuries, things like that. You can start to really notice a difference even before you see the weight loss. These other side effects or benefits will show up first.
Gotcha. So are there side effects that are considered to be not so desirable?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the biggest things that you hear about is keto flu.
Yes.
And it goes hand in hand with a decrease in your milk supply. So
Mm.
the reason why I do what I do is because there isn't a lot of guidance out there for moms that are breastfeeding and wanting to do keto. And as a breastfeeding mom myself, I have done keto with two um, breastfeeding babies. I guess I don't know how
Okay.
to say that,
Yeah.
through two breastfeeding experiences. And,
Yes.
you work so hard as a mom to build your supply, develop that relationship with your infant,
Yeah.
and you don't want to do anything to sacrifice that. I mean, it's
Right.
it's everything. And so um losing your supply is not, you shouldn't have to choose between losing your supply and feeling better. So having more
Mm.
energy, losing weight, if that's your goal.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have to choose between those two things. And a lot of times we feel like we have to. And I know, like, personally, in my second pregnancy, I was keto through most of it and then it kind of dropped off towards the end. And I noticed a huge difference in my mood and in my mental clarity. I just couldn't get things done. And as a mom with a baby that was feeding every 3 hours around the clock, like, I needed to have as much energy as I could and kind of
Mm-hmm.
be more on my game than I was. And so I was like, okay, I'm going back. But if I'm struggling with this as somebody that specializes in keto, like, how are
Mm.
other moms feeling?
Right.
And I knew what to do to prevent
Mm.
any loss to my supply. Um, but there isn't any information out there on how to do it. So
Nope.
I put keto flu
Mm.
and preventing, or like, and losing your milk supply are kind of in the same bucket. And
Okay.
the reasons are the same. Your electrolytes are out of whack. And so, what happens when you start using fat for energy? You're in ketosis. Your body starts flushing out a ton of excess fluid because carbs store fluid and you start to pee out all that extra fluid, and you're peeing out a ton of electrolytes.
Okay.
And in order to beat keto flu, keep your milk supply up, you've got to replace those electrolytes. And what I saw in a lot of groups, like low carb keto mom groups online, was people saying, oh, you need to take this potassium chloride, you need to take this supplement, you take this supplement,
Yeah.
and you don't. And you can get into some trouble when you start playing around with things like electrolytes if they're not balanced well. And I was like, you can absolutely do this with a food approach.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be expensive because you're paying for all these supplements, and it can be accessible to anybody because you don't have to buy all these supplements. And it's safer too because you're getting the nutrients that you need from food. But if you're able to replace those electrolytes, then you're not going to see a dip in your supply, and your keto flu symptoms are going to be pretty minimal. And what people see with keto flu is they'll have like a decrease in energy. They'll feel really tired, maybe headaches, maybe nausea. None of my clients have that experience because we're getting on top of electrolytes from day one, but
Mm-hmm.
it is a side effect. I would get grumpy. So it would be like afternoon, I'd be getting home from work and I'd be like just grumpy. I'd be like, oh, I need my broth, which is part of my plan for replacing sodium. And
Mhm.
so I'd have my broth, and within 20 minutes, I felt like a normal human being again. But like, yeah, just getting kind of grumpy. You might have a little bit of brain fog, which is kind of the opposite of what we're going for. But it's again, when your body is transitioning from using carbs for energy to using fat for energy, there's just this natural process that happens because you're just not efficient at it yet. But if you're
Gotcha.
supported with those electrolytes and fluids and eating the right foods, then you're going to get over it pretty quickly. Most of my clients, I would say, like by day 4, are on the upswing and starting to feel the energy come back.
So, okay, I would think, I don't know, we've kind of conditioned ourselves to, well, I shouldn't say that, but birthing is a natural part of our lives as women, right? And but it's also a traumatic experience, really.
Mhm.
And so coming out of that traumatic experience of birth, and then I don't know, perhaps a C-section, or whatever complications happen in labor, would you suggest starting a brand new diet? Maybe keto is brand new to them, but they knew that they wanted to start it in postpartum. Would
Mhm.
that be something that you suggest that they start right away after birth, or maybe wait until healing has happened, or what?
Yeah, no, that's such a good question. And it's definitely something I talk to people about a lot because say you're already doing low carb before you have your baby. You
Hmm.
can keep going. Like there's no need to change anything because with my approach, again, I believe in focusing on food first. So we're talking about lots of really great nutrients for recovery. So big focus on collagen and glycine and getting enough protein and really fueling your body and meeting your needs for recovery. That's all really vital and something that if you had started keto before you had your baby, you could just keep going. Now, the reason why I say
Okay.
that is because there's no adaptation period. You're already doing it. Your body's already become keto adapted, which means your organs are starting to use ketones first. So if they have the choice of glucose or ketones, they're choosing ketones. And
Okay.
so you're already good at it.
Hmm.
If you're a mom that has had a higher carb diet and you have your baby, I tell moms to wait at least 8 to 12 weeks. And it's not because of the lack of like nutrients necessarily, because again, this approach is very nutrient dense. So you're really getting a lot of really great recovery foods from a well-formulated keto diet. But you don't want to do anything that can impact your milk supply. And between birth and like that 8 to 12 week mark, your body's milk supply is driven by hormones. And this is when you're most sensitive to disruption. So, say you become too dehydrated, you're not getting the right electrolytes, something isn't working with your diet, and then you're more likely to see a decrease in your supply. After that 8 to 12 week mark, your body has moved from that hormone driven supply to supply and demand. So it's largely dependent on efficient, effective milk removal. So I talk a lot with my clients about how often baby is nursing, how often you're pumping, what does the latch look like? Because if you see a drop in supply after that 12-week mark, it's usually not due to the diet. There's usually something else that's going on. So late onset, like delayed milk supply or decrease in milk supply is often due to other reasons. And so it's good to have your milk supply established before you make any drastic changes to your diet, because then you're chasing multiple factors and it's harder to identify what maybe caused that decrease. And whenever I've seen moms, say that they've taken a huge hit to their supply when they've started with a keto diet, it's because their electrolytes aren't on point and they don't know the right way to do keto. Because again, it's different for moms and breastfeeding moms. And so we have different needs, and our needs are higher and than they were, for a lot of women that were maybe doing keto before they got pregnant. It just looks different.
Gotcha. Wow, that's a ton of great information, and I was thinking back about my children. I breastfed both, but with my first, we went about 5.5 months. And with my second, well, he spent the first 5 weeks in the NICU.
Oh,
So, okay, with my first, I didn't really know what I was doing. I thought, as long as she ate, I didn't have to pump or whatever to
yes.
keep my supply going and all that. And then with my second, he spent the first month in the NICU. So, I was able to pump a ton, and I felt so good because I had a ton stored up for when he came home and stuff. And he ended up feeding for only about 4 months, and it was kind of like a mutual decision between us. Like, I don't know, it was weird. It's
Yeah,
like we felt each other like, okay, this really isn't it for us,
we're good.
Yeah. And so and plus I started to dry up too. But when I think about it, it was around that 3 month mark where
Ah,
things changed in both of the experiences. So that's
yeah,
super interesting to me. Man, I wish I knew this
I
stuff,
know. I know. And that's, honestly, that's why I do what I do. With my first, um, I wasn't keto. I had a healthy pregnancy, but looking back, I was probably having a lot of blood sugar swings because
Mm,
I vomited constantly the entire pregnancy. And it wasn't a hyperemesis situation. I think it was very much due to blood sugar. And I had a, kind of regular high carb, clean-ish, I thought, diet, but
mhm,
it wasn't serving me very well.
mm.
And that combined with my baby who was born with tongue, lip, and cheek ties, but we didn't discover those until she was about 14 weeks old. So by that point, I had passed the hormone driven milk supply.
Mhm.
And I was now into supply and demand, and I'd had a feeder for 14 weeks that wasn't efficient at removing milk. And so I was never able to establish a full supply with her. And for me, that was absolutely devastating. And
Yeah.
I literally did everything. Like I did the pumping, the triple feeding, the
Mm.
medication from overseas, like
Oh,
everything.
wow. Yeah.
And I went into like it was a kind of a traumatic experience just from that feeding relationship standpoint. We ended up going on to she fed literally until the night before her sister was born because her sister came at 36
Wow.
weeks, and I thought I'd have a few more weeks to kind of wean the 3-year-old, but
Yeah.
it didn't happen. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, and you're done.
Yeah.
But in that time, I had switched to a paleo lifestyle because my first had a dairy allergy. I
Mm.
found out that I didn't tolerate gluten at all, and I'd been trying to ignore that for years.
Oh, wow.
And so I gone more paleo, and then I started playing more with keto and discovered that my body was so much happier in ketosis than I had ever been.
Mhm.
Just I felt so much better than I ever had. So I
Great.
really improved my metabolic health quite a bit between baby number one and baby number two. And when I was working with an IBCLC when I was pregnant, I just wanted to be like, okay, what's our plan for this baby? Like with my second, I need to have a plan. Like I want this to work. And she was like, you've been doing keto for 2 years. She's like, you are going to be fine. She's like, the last time she was like, it was the ties, which now you know to look for immediately. But also like your hormones were sensitive to like we suspect your hormones were sensitive to blood sugar imbalances. And so for me, having my blood sugar swing so much made me less efficient at creating milk. I was not
Gotcha.
as successful. So I had half a supply with baby number 1, and I ended up with a full supply with baby number 2. And that was really powerful for me, because I know that it was a lot of work that I'd done on my own health between those two periods of time. And then also just expanding my knowledge and becoming a certified breastfeeding specialist, and trying to do this just to help other moms that, are fighting the same battle.
Right. So, okay, aside from keto, y- the blood sugar swings, you
Mhm.
said they affect your breast milk production. So, okay, because a lot of moms with gestational diabetes, we eat this diet for 3 months that, we don't necessarily want to. We're forced into this.
Mhm.
And,
Yes.
after birth, everyone, or even like 3 months before birth happens, they're thinking about what's my first meal going to be after all of this is over.
Yes.
So yeah, how, like, I mean, I would guess that it's okay to, have a high carb meal, or, a cheat meal, a reward, or whatever you want to call it after birth. But is that should we still be sensitive and mindful about our carb intake if we want to continue breastfeeding?
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that we're just really starting to learn more about. Um, but your breast tissue has insulin receptors, just like the rest of your body. And
Okay.
so if you have insulin resistance and your body just does not respond to the signal of insulin the way it's supposed to, not only can that impact your blood sugar, but it can impact your milk supply as well. And it's something that no one talks about.
Hmm.
Is absolutely a factor. And so, a lot of the old research on the number of people the number of women that can't successfully breastfeed was like a 5% rate. And we really suspect that it's significantly higher. And a lot of that has to do with increasing, prevalence or diagnosis of insulin resistance types of health issues. So
Hmm.
PCOS and gestational diabetes, and more women that have pre-diabetes before they become pregnant, and things like that are going to, over time, really start to show that it impacts your milk supply, or can impact your milk supply. Some women aren't going to be as sensitive to it as others are, and we don't yet know why that is. They say for PCOS, like a third of women will have an oversupply, a third of women will have an undersupply, and a third of women will have an adequate supply. So there's, these huge variations in like the rates. But if you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, or not with type 2 diabetes, but with gestational diabetes, like, that your body, again, just isn't handling those carbs as well.
Hmm.
And that, even though it's going to improve quite a bit when baby is born, you still have that impaired carb tolerance. And so while it may seem like, okay, my blood sugar numbers are like back to normal and I can go back to eating the way I was before, you want to be cautious with that, because you are at higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes. But
Hmm.
also, like, your body, you grew a human, you're recovering, and anything that you can do to help like stabilize your blood sugar levels and keep those insulin spikes from happening is going to support your health longer term. So looking beyond just milk supply, but ahead to another pregnancy, if that's your goal, or 10 years down the line, when your babies are growing and wanting to be healthy for them.
Yes.
It can be tempting to want to go back to the high carb stuff, but it can really be in your health interest to think about carbs the way you did when you were pregnant.
Right. Yeah. yeah, take what you learned from this experience and apply it moving forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the how does keto affect breast milk composition? Like since you said it's high fat, you know how breast milk separates and it shows that
Yes,
layer of
yeah.
fat. Is there more fat in breast milk or like, is there anything that changes? No?
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. And there's kind of like, I don't know, a legend or a myth that like your breast milk gets more fatty. Now, I suppose that could be possible. Like if you were really under eating, like not just under eating fat, but like you were really malnourished and then you started to eat fat and that fixed everything. But no,
Mhm.
the amount of fat in your milk supply is dependent on when baby last ate, how much of your breast was drained, um,
Hmm.
things like that, like frequency of feeds. That's what impacts the actual like fat content. Um, what a keto diet can change though is the types of fat in your milk.
Okay.
So if you're eating like a really high omega-3 keto diet, like a Mediterranean kind of keto diet, you're going to have higher concentrations of like omega-3 fatty acids in your breast milk. If you were doing a like dirty keto, which it's like a highly processed keto where you're getting a lot of
Oh.
processed foods, which I don't
Mhm.
recommend.
Okay.
But if you're doing that and you're getting a lot of vegetable oils and processed foods, like that's going to change your breast milk composition kind of in a more negative way, because you're
Okay.
going to be getting fats that are more of the polyunsaturated fats. And so having the higher omega-3 is going to be better than having the higher PUFA concentration. But that's really what changes is the types of fats.
Okay. That's cool. All right. So what are the foods, or should I say, are there foods that should be completely avoided doing the ketogenic diet?
Yeah, I have people avoid like the grains. So
Okay.
oatmeal, bread, flour, anything made from regular flour. Um, Beans typically are going to be really high carb and just kind of not worth your carbs, essentially.
Mhm.
Um, and rice, quinoa, stuff like that is going to be too high in carbs. What we really focus on is, your proteins and fruits and veggies, and more of a focus on the vegetables. The goal for my moms is to get 5 servings of non-starchy veggies a day. So that's things like bell peppers and leafy greens and cucumbers and Brussels sprouts and stuff like that. And kind of like having smaller servings if you want them of things like peas or other starchy kind of veggies. And
Okay.
then doing a lot of berries as well, because berries are lower in carbs. And you get more bang for your buck. You could have some banana, but you're not going to get the volume that you get from berries. And
Mm.
so that's what I tell people to do. But for the most part, like the foods that you can't have are like juice, soda, ice cream, regular ice cream, regular cookies, regular bread, things like that. And just focusing on, again, the more whole foods. And you can do really well with that.
Gotcha. Do you happen to follow any of the keto bloggers, recipe bloggers? Like, is there someone that you really like out there?
I love Nom Nom, and
Oh yeah.
she's Gnom. And I love her recipes. We made some gingerbread muffins and gingerbread cookies for Christmas,
Hmm.
and she's great. I haven't tried a single recipe from her that I don't like. She's got some great low carb tortilla recipes, and I have to be dairy free, so I do a completely dairy free keto diet, and she has a lot of recipes that are dairy free, which I really like.
Now it's just nomnom.com. It's not the
It's
nom nom paleo.
It's not the Nom Nom Paleo, no. And there's an
Okay.
extra G. It's GNOM, and I think it's dash GNOM.
Okay.
And like her recipes are my favorites. Again, I have to be dairy free. If you can do dairy, like there's a whole world out there.
Right.
But that's the other thing too about keto is that you don't have to, you can be a vegetarian, you can be dairy free, you can be egg free, you can meet a lot of diet restrictions, for you or for your baby. It doesn't have to be like a meat and egg, bacon based keto diet. Like there's so many
Right.
ways to do it.
Yeah, that's what I thought keto was,
Yeah.
what, 2 or 3 years ago. That was when, like, I just started paying attention to it, and all these people were talking about butter, bacon, and meat. And I'm like, "Okay, but at some point that
Right.
has to be."
Sometimes you gotta have something else. I mean, seriously, and that's the thing. Like, my moms have better diets on keto, like, more nutrient dense
Mhm.
food on keto than they did before. And one of my moms recently said, she was like, I'm enjoying food so much more than I
Awesome.
have before because it tastes better. She's like, I can add fat and salt to my veggies and they taste great. Like,
Yes.
yes, we should enjoy the food we're eating. Like,
Totally.
that's what makes it sustainable. That's what makes it possible for people to do and really get joy from it because I don't believe in anybody eating something just because they're told that it's healthy. Like that's dumb. Like you
Mhm.
need to eat food that fuels your body and that you enjoy, because food's so much more than just energy.
Yeah. So talking about sustainability, I mean, is there like a recommended period of time that this should be done? Should it stop after you reach your weight goals or whatever it may be?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it totally depends on what your goals are. Now, you don't want to approach it like a crash diet,
Okay.
because if you go all in and then you're like, okay, at my goal, I am going to start eating Pop Tarts and sugary cereal and all the carbs because I am now looking fine. Like, that's not going to do you any good
Yeah.
because there is a reason why your body is doing well on keto. And for a lot of people, it's that carb tolerance piece. Like their body just doesn't tolerate carbs the way, if you have a friend that's the same height, like lives on your same street and doesn't have any history of insulin resistance or blood sugar issues at all, like they're going to be able to eat more carbs than you are. Like that's just how it works. Again, largely based on your genetics, that family history of type 2 diabetes, things like that. Your body just doesn't tolerate carbs the way somebody else's does. So if you were to go back to eating like your regular carb diet, you're going to gain it back. Like that's just how it works. So it's important to go into it knowing that this isn't just a crash diet. This is more of a lifestyle approach. Now, when you do get to your goal weight, you can start increasing those carbs. And again, we're trying to find that carb tolerance level. So, how many carbs can you eat that keeps your body at the weight you want to stay at, that keeps your brain clear, that keeps your energy levels up, your pain free? Those are the things that we're looking for at that point.
Okay.
And, for some people, it may be, 100 carbs, 120 carbs even. But you're not going to be able to go back to like a standard American diet.
Is there some kind of range that is considered to be the normal carb amount for a standard American diet?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I mean, like the recommendations is like 50 to 60% of calories
Oh,
from
wow.
carbs. So that would put you at like, let's see, we're going to do some math, like 1,200 calories from carbs. So that's like 300 grams.
Oh, well, yeah, I could see how that's easily eaten in a day,
Mm-hmm.
on the American diet.
Yep. Yeah,
And far
exactly.
surpassed. You know what makes me angry recently? Like, what is it? What grinds my gears
Ah,
recently
yes.
is when I walk into, or I just see a commercial or whatever on McDonald's or Pizza Hut or something, and it said, "Make it a meal," and the meal is just the side, which is either French fries or breadsticks, and then a soda for the
Yes.
drink. And it's like, that's not a real meal. That is
Mhm.
gonna, oh gosh, that'll have
No,
you stopped
that
up
is
for
not a
days, first of
meal.
all.
That
Yes.
is so true.
Yes. So that's my pet peeve recently. I'm just like, man, this is why we are so we're struggling in health as a
This
nation. Like,
is the problem. Yes.
yes.
Yes,
So,
yeah, and even in my pediatric practice, like, I try to teach families, like, you don't have to have, like, your main carb and then another carb. Like,
mhm,
let's balance it all out with protein and fat, and this is gonna help everybody.
right.
What
Yeah.
you're seeing me for, this is gonna help you. So yeah, no, you're so right.
Yeah. Okay. So we're getting down to it now for breast milk, or even I guess just in postpartum recovery, trying to maintain or increase your supply. Are there any superfoods that, like
Mm.
help with that? I know superfood is like a trendy term or whatever,
Yeah,
but
right.
yeah, are there foods that you recommend?
Yes, definitely. So, for anybody that is not a vegetarian, my number one recommendation is bone broth. And
Okay.
like, if every mom was served bone broth on her tray at the hospital after having a baby, whether vaginally or by C-section, like that would be the best start to your postpartum
Oh,
period.
awesome.
And it's just so full of minerals and collagen for tissue healing. And it really is like the ultimate postpartum superfood. Now, you don't have to just drink straight bone broth. You can use it in soups. You can use it in recipes. You can use it in a lot of different ways. A
Mhm.
lot of my moms, I have them just drinking it twice a day. On
Okay.
its own. But that's like one of the biggest ones. Also, things that are going to be rich in glycine. So that's your meats that are cooked on the bone. It could be, a pork roast or carnitas or a homemade chicken soup that you make the whole chicken.
Mhm.
Um, Things like that are going to be really great for postpartum recovery. Eggs, leafy greens that are, those dark leafy greens, and then lots of like those iron containing foods as well. So meats and um, those dark meats are really great. Now for my vegetarian moms, it doesn't mean that you're out of luck. There's still things
Mhm.
that you can do, really focusing on those dark leafy green veggies, as well as if you're okay with some marine collagen peptides, that can be something that you add in as well. If not, then at the very least, you need to be making sure that you're getting like an algae fish oil, algae oil for DHA for baby's brain.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also just focusing on getting enough protein for your recovery too. Very important.
Okay. When it comes to getting started, what should a mom's first step be?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say that probably their first step should be coming and following me so that they
Yeah,
can get some ideas
absolutely.
on
Yes.
the right way to do it. You can ask anybody, but it's best to get some, really tailored support and make sure that you get the professional recommendations. But, just making sure that you have an electrolyte plan is super important. You're knowing how you're going to hydrate.
Mm.
You have some foods made up because, oh my gosh, like a new mom doesn't have time like to make food, and you don't want to get to 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you haven't eaten yet, because we all do it, and
Mhm.
then you're ravenously hungry and you'll eat anything.
Right.
You want to be able to have like, go grocery shopping, have your food like there and ready to go, so that you don't get to that point, because it's not good for you, it's not good for your body, it's not good for your milk supply. Like, you really need to put your meals first. That being said,
Yes.
it doesn't have to be like meal prep intensive. Like, I am not a meal prepper. Like, I like today for lunch, I threw a bunch of olive oil in a pan with some spinach and some eggs. And like, that was my lunch because I had 5 minutes to eat.
Mhm.
And so like just, having a plan, knowing what you're going to do, knowing what your body needs is the thing to do before you get started. And then also making sure that you've waited for that 8 to 12 week period. And for moms that have breastfed before, you're going to recognize more readily when your milk supply has established.
Mhm.
And um, those moms, I'm always like, okay, come on, join me when you're around 8 weeks postpartum. I'm going to be okay with that. If you're a first time mom, wait until that 12-week mark so that you know exactly how your supply is doing, and we can go from there.
Gotcha. And yeah, so I guess the service that you offer, it's a one-on-one coaching.
I actually am doing group coaching now. I
Okay.
found that moms need the support of other moms. So
Yes.
going through the same thing that other moms are going through, whether you are exclusively breastfeeding, exclusively pumping, if you're doing just a little bit of breastfeeding and you don't want to lose that milk supply at all and your formula, whatever, like we all can benefit from being together
Mhm.
and getting that support. So I do small groups where we work together, and you have individual like attention based on like what your questions are. We do a weekly group Zoom call where you can ask anything. It's really a like kind of like a troubleshooting space where everyone gets a chance to talk about what they're doing, what's working for them, what's a struggle for them, and then I offer them support and answers. And the great thing about like working with me is because you don't just get that keto piece, you also get the breastfeeding support as well.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's something that's really lost in a lot of keto spaces
Mhm.
where, we can kind of apply what we know, but I don't really know anything about breastfeeding. So good luck with that part.
Mhm.
And so I really combine like that piece of breastfeeding support along with the keto support, and also just making it something that's doable for you,
Right.
because we don't have time. No one has
Mhm.
time. So support
Exactly.
is everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, and then what is your name on Instagram?
Yes, it is keto.for breastfeeding.
Awesome. We will be sure to link to that in the show notes.
Awesome.
Wonderful. So, I mean, whoa, we covered a lot,
We
but
did. Whew.
yeah, was there anything that we didn't touch on that you think the moms will want to know?
I don't think so. No. And like if anybody has
Okay.
questions after listening to this, reach out to me over on Instagram. I
Yeah.
love to chat with people. I love to talk about this.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. And I'm so glad you're doing it. You are the first, like I told you, you're the first that I came across that, had a different perspective on it because
Yes.
not everything works for everyone. So,
E- Exactly. And that's the thing. Like for some people, keto and breastfeeding is not going to be the right fit.
mhm.
But for those moms that know they feel great doing keto, or are, wanting to keep those, blood sugar levels in control long term, like there's a way to do it that's safe and effective and can really help you feel great. And so that's, those are the moms I'm here for. Not everybody.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes.
Okay, that was such an awesome and informative chat. I hope that you guys learned something that you can benefit from and use and apply to yourself going forward. We will link to everything that was mentioned in the episode. I forget that one thing already, but if we mention something in the episode and you want to know more about it, just check the show notes page and we'll have it linked there. We'll also link to Laura's Instagram account. And if you have any questions, go ahead and follow up with her. Or if you want to have another perspective about this topic, or if there's someone that you know that has a different take on this and has valuable information to offer, then please let me know on my website or on my Instagram, anywhere. And I would love to reach out to them and see if we can get them on so that we can, be informed and make informed decisions based off of good evidential information. And also, just because we talked about breastfeeding in this episode, I know I don't want to discourage or try to sway anyone from breastfeeding or not. But because we mentioned breastfeeding here, I want to also mention our last episode 15 with Mallory, who was a formula feeding technician. And I highly encourage you to go back and listen to that episode. Even if you are 100% not budging, of course, you're going to breastfeed. There's no other option. We are faced with circumstances in life all the time that just completely change our plans. And in your case, that may be having to switch to formula when you thought that you were going to be able to breast milk to breastfeed. So just to kind of prepare yourself, or just kind of ease your transition if that does happen, I highly suggest that you go back to episode 15 and listen to Mallory give us awesome, I mean totally awesome information about formula. I highly recommend that episode for any mom that's pregnant, because even still in the postpartum period where they're breastfeeding and maybe thinking about formula feeding, or the breast milk is drying up, whatever it may be. Just because that episode is just packed with a ton of information, that Mallory really calms our nerves and eases our minds about what's in about what's in formula, and how it's made, and how it compares to breast milk and all of that stuff. And she's the expert on it. A happy new year to you and yours, and I will talk to you guys next time.